impressed me so much was that you had these great inside sources among the military, maybe, who were telling me what the special forces were doing in Mindanao, where you have,
I
is
think it
that
was a
right?
combination. We also had the kind of like I can't even remember what they were called, but in Indonesia was where a lot of
Right,
were,
right,
yeah.
the
So
jihadists
anyway,
there.
goes still to your work. I was telling Sandy that, I was like, I remember Dana. She's fantastic. Anyway, so yes, the world, how can the world have gotten worse? And it has,
Exactly, exactly. That seems now like a simple world almost, doesn't it?
because you could still hold institutions and government accountable, right?
Yes.
Those tools made a difference. Now we're struggling uh, with the attention of our public, and we're struggling with making government actually go back to its contract, go back to, if you're
Mhm.
exposed, you acknowledge and do something about it.
And we back in those days we caught heat from people who didn't like what we were reporting, but no one said you're fake news and what you say is absolutely false.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's the
Or
other
tried
thing.
to put you in jail, right? I mean, well, um,
They were
you,
still trying to put a couple people in jail there then.
yeah, that's true. That's
Jim
true.
Risen of the New York Times,
Of
a
course.
couple others. But the whole fake news thing and the whole social media was not really a big deal then. And so, just to give the audience a perspective, you then created what today is really the shining light of media accountability, Rappler, which is just such an amazing organization on a shoestring, probably still. But you also have a side consultancy. I don't know what to call it. Where you've taken your network, your ability to analyze networks online and made it into something. And that's really what I kind of wanted you to talk about before we went to the film, because those are your enemies today, some of them,
Yeah.
right? And they're able to mobilize actual real people in the real world. So can you talk about how you learned, what those networks are for people who aren't familiar with it, and really how you learn to analyze them because it's a skill other people are trying to figure out?
Data and technology, right? And I'll start first on that one, which is what we did as journalists, which is to take the data that is publicly available to everyone to try to understand the threat we were facing and analyze that data using social network analysis, which was the foundation of Rappler. Once we had to do this in 2016 because we were just, the
Yeah.
attacks were exponential. You know this, Dana.
On
So
Facebook, on
on
Twitter.
Facebook. Yeah. And then once we did that, I realized that this was happening not just to us, but to everyone online. And so when in April 2018, once the cases started coming, 2018 was the year the government weaponized the law against us. When that happened, our in January 2018, the government revoked our license to operate. We challenged it and kept operating. But by April, 50%, 49% of our advertisers dropped. So we actually took the foundation, which is our journalism that is empowered by tech, and built a new sustainable business model that is keeping us through. It
Hmm.
grew something like 12,000%. And what is it? The core of it is taking what we do in the real world, the network analysis. And I started doing that, Dana, because of terrorists, our
Yeah.
investigations into terrorist networks. So taking that, when you bump it into the virtual world, times four. And then if you can map the networks, then you can track them. I think most of the world focused on the content. The content can change, but the networks do not. So we became a fact checking partner of Facebook. And once we started fact checking it, we found the lie and we would dig deeper to look at the networks that spread the lies. And that's where you find the recidivists. And those are the ones, frankly, that Facebook, YouTube, Twitter should be taking down.
Hmm. And you had what kind of? I sort of know the answer to this question, but what kind of reception did you have when you started telling Facebook, "Look at these are the networks. They're run by bad guys. They're trying to really, they were threatening you. They were threatening other opposition politicians. Um, Facebook
They
wasn't quite. Yes, go
you
ahead.
know you know this because in some ways your reporting also helped me understand it because I just didn't believe that Facebook, I didn't believe they would do things in bad faith
Mm,
until recently, because at the beginning, I actually really thought that they didn't know. So I gave them the data. At a certain point, they can't claim ignorance anymore. And, at the beginning, I didn't believe in legislation. But fast forward to where we are today, I think the how did they react? They reacted first Stonewall, then denial, then we will do something about it. And they did for a little while. There have been 4 takedowns in the Philippines. 4 is nothing. And one of the takedowns of the largest network happened 13 months after we exposed it in Rappler. So every day that this operates, this, the attacks on both sides of Black Lives Matter that happened on social media changed the way real people think. So look, now I'm part of a group that is recommending at least 12 major goals that are far more systematic in approach, 250 tactical recommendations. We published this information. The Forum on Information and Democracy published this Thursday last week. It's
mm,
time to regulate the platforms because you cannot have, like in a newspaper, you cannot have commercial running editorial, right? And that is exactly what the tech platforms have. And the growth group is the one that is determining how to protect the public. That just doesn't work because their incentive is money. So it comes down. Shoshana Zuboff, professor emeritus at Harvard, wrote this book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. Everything comes down to the business model, whether you're talking about content moderation, data privacy, the rise of hate speech and violence online that is changing us, influence operations, all of this go down to the business model.
yeah.
I will shut up. Sorry, Data.
No, no,
You
no.
triggered me.
This is one of my favorite topics, and it is like you said, just kind of unbelievable that Facebook wouldn't know the depth of the problem, and then when told the depth of the problem, that they just wouldn't fix it. But they can't if they want. They don't want to change their business model. That's where they make their profit.
Correct.
Yeah,
But it's too much. There's a easy come, easy go is really should be that model because so much came to them. A news group could never not have the costs of setting up. And that's exactly what the social media platforms have done. They've set up globally without looking at the legal, the culture, all things.
yeah.
This is what limited growth of news organizations in the past. Why should technology platforms be different? Right? There is a cost to fast growth. And now we know the cost. It
Yeah.
is untenable for democracy.
Untenable for democracy. That is a powerful statement and so true. So, Ramona, if you're still there, I wanted to ask you about how you met and how you did your film. But unless you come back, I won't do that. I know she's there.
Sorry. Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm juggling. Wait,
Yes. Okay. Welcome to the
hi.
world. Yes, we
Yes.
are. So, when
Juggling
did you meet Maria? And for people who haven't seen your film, it is so intimate. You spent. Can you just tell us a little bit about how much time you spent with her
uh,
and how you convinced her to let you spend time in her apartment or everywhere, just everywhere?
um, so
Oh,
we
my
spent,
favorite
I
scene
guess,
is getting dressed for that reception, that award reception. We'll talk
so
about that.
I think we met in 2018, I think, and then we filmed some of it in 2018, but most of it over 2019 and 20, so a year and a half, I guess. And we entered Maria's life really when she started getting arrested, and but by then she had given us access. So I have sort of this checkered history with Maria because back in '04 when I made my film about Imelda, I actually went to Manila because Imelda was suing us over the film. She had a temporary restraining order. Long story. So I had to fly into Manila to defend the film, to show up in court, to appear in court. And the publicist of the distributor in Manila gave me a list of people who wanted to interview me. And Maria Ressa, who was then the face of CNN, right? She was the face of CNN in Southeast Asia, wanted to interview me. I was like, oh my God, she wants to interview me. And then someone said, she doesn't really like the film. I'm like, oh, I don't want to talk to her because I was in the middle of this really hectic film festival circuit, and I wanted to talk about the court case, but not the film. I wanted to litigate the litigation, but not my film. So
Yeah.
I said, "Can you just make an excuse?" They said, "No one makes excuses to Maria Ressa. You got to." I said, "No, I really don't. I really don't." So I didn't, and I turned it down. So fast forward like 14 years later, I'm in her office at Rappler, and I'm like, Sheila Coronel actually was one who introduced us, because Sheila's a advisor in the film. And I'm hoping, I mean, what is the likelihood that she'll remember that I turned her down? It's 14 years ago. So I'm pitching my film and telling her this is what I want to do. And one of the first things she asked me, she goes, "I've always wondered why you turned me down 14 years ago." I'm like, "Oh my God, she remembered. What do I do? What do I do?" And I said, I can't deny it. I said, "Well, I can explain. I can explain. But please still do this film." And to her, she still did it. You should ask her why, but I think it's all about. That's what I do. I just stick around. I stick around until you'll always notice me. Obviously, I have a crew, but my hope is that I'm the first one in the room and I'm the last one, out to leave. And I guess I always say that even if I didn't make this film with Maria, I think we would have been friends. She's one of the people that I filmed immersely that were close. Our lived experience is very closely aligned. We have some, it intersects. I was born and raised in the Philippines and spent my childhood in the Philippines, but grew up here, grew up in the America. I became an adult here, and Maria's the opposite. She spent her childhood here and became an adult in Asia, actually. So we have that commonality, and I think based off of that, that's where it started. Because it has to be, she has to trust me. Basically, at the end of the day, she's got to trust me, and I got to earn that trust. I know, she won't just give it to me, and she did. So thank you, Maria. But you
Maria,
have to ask her why she said yes.
I mean, people don't really, if you haven't gone through trying to do a documentary, there's no way to understand just how intrusive it can be on someone's life and how patient, the filmmakers have to be. Well, both sides. So give us a little bit of the backstory, Maria. What was it like for you to have a camera everywhere, including in your dressing room in a hotel room?
Wow.
Did you actually forget about it after a while?
Well, strangely, yes, even though really at times you were so annoyed, but like, I hope I didn't show it up. But look, that Imelda thingy actually sparked the debate that still continues, which Dana, I know you will love. It is that line between, silence and complicity, right? Which Ramona will tell you that's not what she does because it's
No,
already,
it's not what I do. We've been having this conversation for 2 years now, Maria.
You guys
right?
aren't going to give it up, though.
Yeah, but like so that's part of it was that the underpinning everything when the cameras are on all the time, so you get used to them, and then the people are people who become friends. I think that's what I think Ramona said trust. So yes, trust. I think trust in terms of her response that day was critical because she was honest, and then she was honest about everything else she was doing, and it's a great combination of Filipino and American values, which again, living in the Philippines, I think Dana, I've told you this, when I'm with Americans, I feel Filipino. When I'm with Filipinos, I feel American. And so, you carve out. And I think that's part of the reason we can shorthand certain things now also. Um
How did it affect, do you think, both of you, the actual confrontations that took place between you and authorities? And also, just aside from the question about having cameras in some of those moments, are you right now less or more worried about what they may or may not do to you?
that's a tough question.
Well, the
Um
first one first. Like, do you
First
think?
one's easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy. I mean, having them there was more protection. Absolutely. And having them there, the other reason is because I wanted it documented. And we couldn't do it because when it's someone else, we know this as journalists. Someone else will have a different eye. They will look for different things. And you have to trust that they will keep that. They have so many hours of footage of us, right? And there's so many things that are sensitive in there because you never know what will happen.
Yeah.
And I guess that was it. So having them there was, I felt like, it's added protection. And where is this going to go? Who knows?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, do you still have, men, big guys showing up downstairs
Yeah, yeah. I
threatening?
mean, yeah, we have
You
worse scenarios built in, right? I mean, this is, and we drill them in Rappler. We have this down to, we even in COVID, we have another scenario in place, and I think that's the right place. You treat it like you would, like you're in a war zone, and you have to make sure every member of your team is ready for
Yeah.
a trigger, and you have to drill that so that muscle memory also kicks in when the real moment happens. Um, I think that today it's a little bit worse. During lockdown, the
Mm,
Philippine government shut down ABS-CBN, the largest
right.
broadcaster in the Philippines, and they passed an anti-terror law that now has more than 35 petitions at the Supreme Court, and it should be heard, but it hasn't yet. 35 petitions demanding it be declared unconstitutional. Under this new law, anyone the government designates a terrorist can be arrested without a warrant and held in prison for up to 24 days.
Hmm.
So no one will know, right? So it's
Yeah.
bizarre to me that this is my country today. We were just talking about, what the work it was a war on terror. Well, it now feels like it's a war on people, citizens.
Yeah. And Ramona, tell quickly, how did you feel having the camera there during those confrontation with government officials? Did you uh, ever feel like you were going to get swept up in it, or that they respected the kind of space, gave you some space, or did they push you around?
No, because they knew I was making this film. Because really, as you see in the film, I also, it includes Mocha Uson and General Bato, who are close allies of the president. So
Hmm.
in order to get permission from them, and also permission to shoot Duterte very close up during the rallies, because I didn't want to be put in the media, back there in Siberia.
Uh-huh.
So that was a special permission. So they
Oh,
understood that I was making the film. And I think also because we were so, I mean, you couldn't miss us, right? I just too big. Yeah, we were
how many
everywhere.
people are on your team?
We had 2 units on the ground, but whenever Maria was arrested, we were on television with her. So it wasn't, you really, they understood I was making it. I think because they knew I was making it, I had asked them permission for the things that we could film with them. That also protected us. But it's really not an administration I was worried about. It's the crazies, right? The
Yeah.
loonies, the people who show up at Rappler. That's the bigger danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see Sandy out there.
Well, let me jump
Sandy,
in. We've got
you want to try to jump in?
we've got a whole bunch of questions, but Dana, feel free to ask, follow-ups. But I want to start with a question from Karen Squires, who's a great teacher, high school teacher at Capitol High School here in Santa Fe, and she says, Maria, can you give us an update on what's happening? Since the film, I guess, had that slight update from June 2020, but what's happening these days for you?
Uh, I just came from court yesterday. There are more complaints that are filed against us. We keep fighting them. I have a total of 8 criminal charges now, and all told, the maximum when you put all of the penalties together is almost 100 years in jail. So I feel like, you know, whether I go to jail or not will depend on what I do at this time period. The case that you saw, the cyber libel case, is now at the Court of Appeals. I'm fighting for my right to travel, which I should have been granted along with bail. But that we'll see. It's been denied. Every time I travel, I have to ask for permission from the courts that handle the 8 charges, right? So I have permission twice from 6 of the 8, and those 2 that don't. It's just very it feels random, but again, I submit myself to the courts, and I ask that the men and women who handle the cases stick to the spirit of the law. And every time, if I suppose when a conviction happens, then someone will sign it, and I just know that, well, we're on the right side of history. So I just have to stand while I'm on the train tracks while there's a train in slow motion coming, and I can't move because moving gives up. You have to hold the line, because if I duck or if I give up, then these excesses of power are not just okay, they become the norm.
And there's
Sounds
a
like
sort of a follow-up question here from Yvonne O, and she says, do you have strong and powerful supporters to help you through this time?
I don't think that we could have survived if it was just me and Rappler. There are four women who are the founders of Rappler. We make every decision together, and that's one. Rappler itself, the young journalists who are holding the line at the front line, they, along with 41 other journalists and academics, have filed a case at the Supreme Court because President Duterte has banned us from coverage at the palace. So we filed this case at the Supreme Court February 2018. And then beyond that, journalists are nothing without lawyers when the law is weaponized. So I feel like I have the best of legal counsels, but also in the international scene, Amal Clooney leads our international law team, along with Keelan Gallagher. She's a QC who also is defending the family of Daphne Caruana Galizia for justice. And Covington in the States, right? They're doing these things pro bono. So I feel like we survive and do well because of the kindness of strangers who believe in the values. So yes, we do.
But the whole point of all these cases for Maria, we saw it's a time suck, right? That's what she did. She went from court to court to court. Every time she arrived, she had to surrender her passport, show it. It really is a time suck and a money suck. That's the whole point of all these cases.
Yeah.
She can't do her work,
Well,
which is
Ramona,
really the point.
Ramona, a question from you. This is from our fantastic intern, Sydney Pope. She says, was there anything that you weren't able to fit into the film? And let me just pause on that point by saying, what an extraordinary achievement this film was. My goodness, my great congratulations. But was there anything you weren't able to fit into the film that you'd like people to know about, or know about Maria more specifically?
Many. I mean, there are many things. We shot 800 hours, and 2 units on the ground, sometimes three. So something had to give. So many, and also we were in places that we had no business being, right? In like when they were discussing strategy, the legal cases, we had no business being in there. But I knew too that if I put it in, it would compromise Maria, and I promised that would never happen. So those eventually they won't be so sensitive anymore, right? As time passes, like maybe next year, they're very interesting. They're very interesting scenes because you really see the work on the ground, what they had to do legally, and the risks to Maria personally, beyond what you saw in the film. So I'm hoping that when it's no longer sensitive, when all this is behind us, that we'll somehow put together something like a more behind the scenes footage. We'll release it. Definitely. I mean, yes,
Wow, that
we
sounds
have a
wonderful.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quick question here from Herb Thomas, which I was wondering as well. What does Rappler mean exactly? Is that a Tagalog? Where does that come from?
We even had a debate at the very beginning because do you make up a name for a news organization? Because, originally I wanted it to be Ripple. And then one of my co-founders said, but we're in the Philippines. People may pronounce that nipple. So I was like, okay, not Ripple then. So Rappler is rap, like it's a combination of old and young. Rap, i.e. my generation to talk, rap, and then Ripple to make waves. And also rappelling. Pia Renada, who's in the film, she is a mountain climber, right? It's I guess we made it up, and this is how the other story that's in the film is how traditional journalists pivot during this crazy time, and how do you deal with threats. And I think that's part of what we've learned is that you have to keep the discipline, the standards and ethics of the old world, adopt the technology, and then the youth, the kind of adaptability, I think, and the passion. We can't ever lose it, no?
Well, question for you, Maria, here from Esmeralda Tenorio. You may know there was an election here a couple weeks ago, and she writes, I can't think but feel that the Philippines is a cautionary tale for what the United States could be down the line had Trump been reelected. Do you think this distrust in the media will decrease once Duterte leaves office? What, in your opinion, are the first steps to start going in the right direction in regards to overcoming news disinformation and distrust?
uh, you know what? Your battle is just beginning in the States. That it isn't, even if Trump had won, it would be a little bit worse. But the problem is technology. I don't think you saw this isn't in the film because I've evolved into this thinking. And part of the reason I'm so vocal about it is that social media platforms are behavior modification systems, literally. You put in your data and then, machine learning takes it and builds a model of you that knows you better than you do, and then artificial intelligence takes that and then takes all of our experiences, behavioral surplus is what you would call it, that data, and sells it to the highest bidder, whether that is a company, so it is beyond advertising, or a country called propaganda, right? So when that happens, you don't know that you are being manipulated. And when the machine gives you the nudge, the advertising, uh, whether you take it or not, you feed data into the machine again. The short answer is this problem will not be solved with whoever you elect, because the very platforms that deliver the facts, that deliver the news, the incentives of that platform allow lies laced with anger and hate to spread faster and further than facts. It is biased against the facts, biased against journalists. And this is the problem of the global information ecosystem led by Silicon Valley. So, look, I mean, when I was watching the elections, I've said this several times, Silicon Valley sins have come home to roost. And to see America falter in this way, and to see the way it impacts the minds of Americans, the identity of Americans, it's tragic to me.
Yeah.
But you have to demand action, and I think this is why last Thursday I part of a group, the Forum on Information and Democracy. This we released 12 big goals. Things like it's the business model, and don't look at content moderation without human rights, right? But there are 250 tactics. My co-chair in this is former EU Parliament member Mariette Shakit. She is in Stanford right now. Sorry, I get hyper about this. Unfortunately, journalists have lost our gatekeeping powers, but we still have to hold power to account. So we are defenseless without those gatekeeping powers, but we keep doing our jobs. Now we need technology, which has abdicated responsibility for protecting the public sphere, to take responsibility and do something about it.
Well, that leads right into a question that I had watching the other night was, you stated that you found 26 fake accounts that, because of all their connections between them, reached 3 million people. What were your methods in doing that? And I mean, is this sort of a preview of the kind of regulation or the kind of attention we should be paying to social media platforms in years to come?
So the foundation of it is, first you have to collect the data, which is publicly available, right? But right now the problem is that the social media platforms hoard all the data. They don't make it transparent, and it should be, because it is insidiously manipulating us, right? So that's the first. I think the second, after we took the data, which all came from our platform on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, we then used methods of social network analysis, which is, there are a lot of academics that are doing this work now. In fact, there's a group that came together. This is with Graphica, Stanford Observatory. I'm trying to remember the
Is
different
Oxford propaganda group in there? Computational propaganda?
not for the U.S. elections. In fact, the ones I remember there, Washington State,
Yeah.
Kate Starbird has done a lot of really good work. For example, the conspiracy theory that was seeded in 2019 by RT, that is coming out. So this is seeded bottom up, and it was said on YouTube by Steve Bannon. And then that was placed inside closed Facebook pages. And then in 2020 comes top down from President Trump, right? Why do people believe it? Because this insidious manipulation has been going on below the radar. It changes the way people think. It plays on their vulnerabilities, their fear, their anger, and then comes out in the real world. It changes the real world. So that's, I mean, that's what I hope we
I
need.
call it the loss of free will,
Yes,
because
actually, that's
you don't
fair.
actually know that it's happening to you.
So
Yeah,
that's the philosophical. That's where we go, because the
yeah,
question you really have to ask now is, with this kind of manipulation, how much is, where is human agency? Where is free will? How can democracy function when we are actually, the other day I just said, look, this is the matrix,
right.
and it's scary where we are, and we need to actively do something about it. And it isn't just the social media platforms, which I had appealed to them for so long. Enlightened self-interest. Dana, I think you were one of the first to write about the possibility I could go to jail has been enabled by Facebook. I
Right.
have pointed this out repeatedly now. And Americans can do far more than the Filipinos, because
Well,
you're.
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, do you think Biden's election will at least have any effect whatsoever on Duarte, or is it too
They
late
have
for that?
No, I think,
There's
look,
nothing.
we can never say it's too late. We can never say it's too late. I mean,
Yeah,
I think it will take decades for our country to recover in values. And when you have a police, let me just go in history. After Marcos's rule, it took a decade before human rights principles were embedded again in the Philippine police.
hmm,
After the killings in the drug war, which human rights group estimate go up to 27,000 people killed in a little over 3 years, how will we recover? So I worry about things like that. But beyond that, I look at the way Americans think today, so it's not too late to turn the world right side up. I'm doing movies all the time as a metaphor for it, but we're in the upside down, and we've got to figure out uh, how to get the world right side up, because it's necessary for the world.
yeah. Well, I mean, there was a time when the U.S. could exercise some leverage over autocrats with either foreign aid, military aid, uh, moral authority. That sounds so antiquated, but I mean that. I guess that's what I meant. Does the U.S. and Philippines have? Well, they don't have that kind of relationship now because Trump loved Duterte. But if Biden comes in, are there any sticks that he can use that have any hope of moving him?
A lot. I mean, and for example, just last night, Bill Broder did the Magnitsky Awards, right? And the Magnitsky, this is something that already angered the Philippine government, and they threatened to pull out of the visiting forces agreement, the military bases agreement. But look, beyond that, I think the next step. This also all just happened last night. A high-level legal panel that was pulled together by Canada and Britain last year came up with 3 recommendations, papers that were released just last night. And these are ways to protect journalists, to give us further protection from situations like this. But can the Biden administration do something? Absolutely, right? It's the nudge, the push and
Yeah,
pull, because
yeah,
in the end, all of what we're talking about is still about power and money.
yeah.
And
I
also
think
Duterte's a lame duck, right? I mean, he's gonna there's elections in 2022. It's
No,
really a 1 year, 1 term, 1 6 year
Mhm.
term. So by the next year, it will be about 2022 who's gonna run. And if his daughter runs, oh boy, fasten your seatbelts, right? Because that's another Duterte term. I think she's very
Mhm.
popular.
Mhm.
but
I think.
well, that was also what was interesting. Facebook did a takedown of influence networks, influence operations, disinformation network, September 22. And they took down one from China, one from the Philippines, linked with the Philippine police and the military. Right, the one from China was already campaigning for President Duterte's daughter for president in
Yeah.
2022. It was pro-China. It was how, the Chinese Navy is great. And it was attacking me and Rappler, attacking the
Wow.
enemies. Influence operations from China. The one on the Philippine that was linked to the Philippine police and military, it was attacking human rights activists, journalists, including me. I seem to get both domestic and international. And they were tagging them as terrorists, right? So this is something that the government, so here it is, bottom up, terrorists, and then top down, you have the military leaders tagging the same activists, some of whom have died, tagging them as terrorists with an anti-terror law, right? So we can see the evolution of all of this, but we have to do something about it.
So question,
How can we
Ramona.
help?
Question for Ramona. Two sides of this. Ramona, first, the film has been, as I understand, banned in Manila. Maybe not.
No.
Okay.
We can't. Maybe. I mean, we haven't. We released it right before Maria's verdict in June. So we released it for 24 hours, and it was a very, it's going to be on Frontline. So with the help of Frontline, they agreed to release it for free for 24 hours. I wanted to bring awareness to Maria's verdict because we were in lockdown. No one knew what was happening. I felt like, no one's paying attention. Let's call attention to this verdict that's going to happen. So we did that, and we thought, and Frontline said, I think maybe the regular traffic on their YouTube channel would be like 20,000 with a lot of advance notice and a lot of pushing it out there. If we had, but basically we decided in 2 days, and then we were up in 2 days and streaming. At the end of the day, within 24 hours, we had 233,000 full views of the film.
Wow.
Something happened that weekend. I think it was also because ABS was just shut down. There was a lockdown. The anti-terror law was about to become, the bill was about to become law. It was Independence Day, and people were protesting, but the police dispersed everyone. So by the time they got home, the film was up. It was a zeitgeist that you can't
Wow.
plan these things, right? So
Congratulations.
yeah, so since then we haven't been back, but we'll be back before the end of the year. So we'll see, right? So is it going to be banned? Probably not. I can't. We'll see. We'll figure it out. But yeah, people have seen it and they know it's out there. Yeah, it was an incredible weekend. And I was telling Maria that I was prepared for, I make films that sort of unwrap what's happening in the Philippines to a Western audience. So I always feel like, they already know what's happening. But I think because they saw it in that manner, because it's compounded by the lockdown and everyone's isolation, I was ready for the anger. I wasn't ready for the sadness, the deep sadness people felt and disappointment in themselves, really, because it took so long to build the institutions of democracy from the Marcos dictatorship to now. And then people just felt that they weren't paying attention. They weren't vigilant. They took their eyes off the ball, and here we are. And I didn't expect that. That was a very, very difficult. I heard for so many people that weekend. People I didn't know. I mean, constantly just getting in touch with us. And it was deep, deep sadness and disappointment. That was tough. That was
So
really
that's a perfect segue into this question, which is, what can people watching this do? Because I know your crowd, Sandy, and they're probably asking that question. What can we do? I mean, in a specific way, how can we first of all support Rappler? That's actually my question, because the other, getting more broad than that, you've outlined, that report, Maria, that came out. People should look at that and figure out what they should do, get on the cases of the social media companies. But what can they do to support Rappler?
So I will put in a link. So first of all, we couldn't have survived without our community, and the community is global. So thank you. Having us on here is helpful to us. You are helping us shine the light. I'll put in a crowdfunding link, but I will tell you that our legal bills hit roughly $40,000 a month on average. This is what they were trying. So this is like, yeah, dollars. Sorry, let me put it that way, right?
US
So this
dollars,
is like
yes.
a third of our operational expenses. So what the government did was to take away things that we had, money that I had set aside to build a new tech platform, and delayed that by 2 years. But that's okay. So the first is that. But I think, Dana, here's the plan. I have a plan. I think there are three ways, and it is as important for US democracy as it is for Philippine democracy. The Rappler's pillars are three: tech, journalism, and community, right? That's the global solution as well. So for tech, we need to regulate tech. You Americans have so much more power, and Silicon Valley has to be made accountable. We should not be living in the matrix. And I will put a link in for our recommendations for that. We spent months, consulted with over 100 experts all around the world, and these are the recommendations. The second is on journalism. Help your news organization survive this time period. The Washington Post is very lucky. New York Times is lucky, but not everybody is like that. And what we're trying to do is to try to, I'm on the advisory group of the International Fund for Public Interest Media, where we're trying to raise $1 billion globally to try to help independent media survive. There's so much more, but I'll put a link in for that too. And then finally, the third is community. Understand that once you have the facts, while you still have agency, build communities of action. That's Rappler's mission, and who would have thought this would be the world we would be in now? But in 2012, my elevator pitch is Rappler builds communities of action, because I always wanted to take our stories and make a better world, right? So, gosh, Sisyphus climbing the rock up the hill. But if we all do it together, those three pillars, strengthen them, it will bring us out of we'll come out of the rabbit hole, we'll come out of the upside down, we'll turn the world right side up. So we have no choice.
Well, tell us, Maria, a little bit about the community at Rappler itself. And of course, the documentary not only follows you, but also journalists like Pia Renata. So a question from the audience: how do you help Rappler journalists with some of the trauma they've witnessed and their mental health problems as a result? Is that a major concern?
Absolutely. And it started in 2016. When we did the Propaganda Wars series that we published. So I first gave all the data to Facebook. I waited 2 months. Dana, you would know this, because I just didn't believe that they wouldn't fix it before we did the story. That's how much faith I had, right? Foolish me. Anyway, once we published it, everyone in Rappler came under attack. And in that sense, it's our reporters and our social media team. Rappler's 63% women. Our median age is 23 years old. So we're young and we're female. And so what we did almost immediately was, after the shock, like when I received, you saw this in the film, 90 hate messages per hour, right? What do you do? It's a completely new weapon. That's why we went on overdrive to understand what was happening, because I just didn't believe it. And then once we got that, so how do we protect our people was the next thing. Within a few weeks, we told everybody who was being attacked they could go for counseling. We offered counseling. But then the next part was, oh my gosh, the people who are counseling have never dealt with exponential attacks like this. So then we had to ask DART to come in and help train the trainers. And so there's that. And then the second part of that is, from 2016 to today, we've increased security at least 6 times. Physical security, right? We put in place workflows. I feel like I do much more on the back end now, because it's preparing for these types of things, because I don't want a worst case scenario to surprise us and our people. Pia Renata, you saw her in the film when she was banned from the palace. We had drilled a workflow to be able to, when you're attacked, the only defense you have if you're alone is to turn on Facebook Live, right? So that's exactly what she did. And thank God, we just drilled it 2 days before it happened. So yeah, what can I say? They're amazing. Pia was all of 26 years old when President Duterte towered over her and tried to bully her. See, makes me emotional. That's the only time I get really angry.
Yeah.
A great question here that's connected in a way from one of our great high school fellows, Lilia Martinez, also at Capitol High School. And she says, during your first time being detained, Maria, as shown in the film, what were the thoughts going through your mind, and how did you cope with that?
So again, I think it's important to know that I wasn't alone. I was arrested from the Rappler office. My co-founders, the Rappler, the young journalists were turning on their cameras. That's how you found out about it, right? And the there were so many men who were in plain clothes who were trying to intimidate our reporters who was doing this, and that was part of it. One of them actually told one of our young reporters, Ika Ray, you know, stop, shut it down, or you're next. So this kinds of threats was clear what was going through my mind. Number one, I damp down emotions in moments like that. You know, when you're doing a live shot, you just can't be emotional about anything, and I suppose that training really
Mm.
helped. I lived through it trying to process what was happening. I heard the conversations that the arresting officers were having. I heard them, and I will write about this someday, you know. But uh, and and uh, and that night when we were detained, you know, my co-founders, Glenda Gloria, who's our new executive editor now, Beth Frondosa, they both stayed there, and people came to the place where I was detained. Bayan youth came and protested outside. Who would have thought, right? What was going through my mind? I anticipated every step. They arrested me at 5 o'clock so that courts were closed. I knew that there was another court where I could post bail that closed at 9 p.m. because I workflowed that as well. But they made sure that they delayed the papers. The arrest warrant that I had no amount for bail, something that simple. Right? There
Mm.
were so many anomalies every step of the way. And then when we got to the National Bureau of Investigation, they kept us in a waiting area for 20 minutes just to run out the clock. So I just, you know, my co-founders and I walked into where they were hiding, and they were having dinner. And they were having dinner. And I was like, and I knew they were running out the clock. So what do? You can't have a tantrum. You- I knew what was going to happen, and I just resolved not to let it affect me. Um, Ramona got in somehow, and you know, and that was one of the times when she
Yeah.
started filming on her cell phone.
Because my crew had not flown in yet. That was our first day of shooting. That was like my second day back in the Philippines. And I just fought my way in. I just thought that was Rappler. And Maria goes, yeah, she's with us. Oh, I was just, and then I never left. But I think Maria does this thing when she's under the worst of circumstances. You become a journalist, and it's like you cover yourself. And I saw that a lot of times, like especially in court, right? They would be talking about her. We weren't allowed to film in court. They'd be talking about her, but she'd take out her notebook and start writing. And I'm like, what is she writing? What is she writing? So I asked her, I'm like, what are you writing, Maria? She goes, I'm taking notes. I'm like, but it's about you. I said, don't you want to? No, yeah, I'm just taking notes just in case. So she goes into this journalist mode
Mhm.
almost, which is sort of this observer mode, which is fascinating to watch. It's weird that I'm talking about it and you're here, but it is fascinating to watch. She switches into being a journalist, even if it's about her, right? So they're talking about her. It's very meta, actually, and really effective, really very impressive when you see it in real time.
Well, and speaking of meta, Ramona, I mean, you are covering the work of Maria Ressa. You are, you know, shining a light onto her work that the Duterte regime doesn't particularly like. Did you face challenges, threats? Are you kind of classed in the same boat as Rappler for your work?
I hid for a long time on social media. I didn't want to be associated with Maria while making the film because we wanted to be under the radar. I mean, of course, the administration knew we were making the film, but not the trolls, right? It's really the trolls that are worry me. But they do hit the film, but not me personally. They come after the film. They review the film. They they're always wherever we are pushing the film out, and still after Maria. It's still personally after Maria, which is so interesting, but not me personally. But during the filming, it's like gosh, when you're following someone who's wearing a bulletproof vest, yeah, of course you stop for a bit, but then what are you going to do, not do it? I mean, I can't imagine not doing it, right? I mean, will I in 5 years from now? I'd regret it forever. So you just have to do it, and hopefully some of that courage of Maria's like just rubbed off on the rest of the crew, and we're like, let's go. Here we are.
So I see Maria's put some links into the chat box, so folks take a look at those. Dana, I'm going to throw it back to you for a couple of questions to conclude us or to take us through. But Maria, let me ask you about the future. You've got some things on your plate right now, and what does the next year sort of look like for you in terms of criminal cases, in terms of Rappler, in terms of the amazing work that you do?
So I think, much as we've been talking doom and gloom, and the links I sent you show really how much of an uphill battle we are going to have to put tech, to make tech accountable, right? This is a problem, I think, that started in the United States, and please, you must find a solution. Article 230. I mean, you're going to have to do something about this. That's the first step. But what do we do? Here's the upside. The upside is that the world that we live in has now completely been reduced to rubble. The old problems are still there, but COVID-19 just smashed it. And once a vaccine comes in, we are in real time having to build what a new world is going to look like. Right. And so this is the time when you are going to have to figure out, how can we create a world that is more equal, that is more sustainable. That's the other part, because all of the wicked problems are coming together: climate, truth, health, right? These are all things, and it isn't one thing where one person or one country can find a solution. These are global problems, and humanity must come together, not just to fight against the worst of human nature, but to find solutions so we survive. It's that. That's the big picture, right? So in that big picture, the little battles I have are nothing. But I mean, what I do to fight the little battles is to focus on the big picture. And I will fight each of these cases in court. I am looking forward to fighting for my rights, because that's what it is. Before I was a journalist, I'm a Filipino citizen. I'm a US citizen. And I demand that my governments stick to the Constitution, right? So simple.
So I have an idea. How about if all of you in the Philippines and all of us in the United States, we all demand that our governments stick to the Constitution? That seems like a bar that everybody could get behind, right?
Simple, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I was really, just the other day, I went through the Bill of Rights. So the Philippines has a Bill of Rights because our Constitution is patterned after the United States. I went over the Bill of Rights and I just started ticking what has already been violated. And, it is shocking.
Yeah. There are some models, just to continue on the up note, there's some models for reforming social media. The European model is really the best. It's the most advanced, and it's the most similar to countries that have free speech very prominently in their Bill of Rights, because Europeans figured this out 10 years ago, that social media was doing a lot of things that they did not want them to do. And so they legislated. And Facebook and Twitter and the other media platforms, unlike the Philippines, which they could ignore because they didn't have any clout,
Power and money. Right?
Money equals clout.
Right.
In Europe, they have to pay attention. So they act differently in Europe than they do even in the United States, because we haven't even tried. We haven't even tried in the United States.
Yeah, we have to even go further than the legislation that Europe is looking at. GDPR. I mean, all of this still doesn't take into account the insidious manipulation that is upcoming. Right. So this is part of the reason I put in a link. Please take a look at this. Some amazing minds have worked on this. This includes Sina Naral from MIT, who just published The Hype Machine. It includes David Kay, who is who just
UN
finished his
rapper.
stint as the UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression. So it's trying to. The one thing we cannot do is to use old world definitions to tackle the new world. Right? So it isn't about content, it is about insidious manipulation. And we have to find new ways, new words, and we need to tell our public, whether it's global public, that you're being manipulated, that your data is being collected, that there is a model of you that's created, and none of this is transparent.
Yeah.
And Ramona, what is next for the film? I'm sure you've got some things coming up. I know, is it playing at some festivals coming up?
Yes, it's playing at Doc NYC here. It's going to have its European premiere at IDFA, which is in Amsterdam. It's doing a lot of this talkbacks and journalism conferences throughout the fall and winter. Today we just started our Don't Shut Up social impact campaign. We sent everyone masks. Don't shut up, because that's what Maria always says. What can we do? Don't shut up. And she, it really helps. Don't shut up. Just keep on speaking truth to power. So we're doing that. We're doing festivals. We're still in virtual cinema, which is online. Actually, it's VOD. It's what we call a theatrical release in pandemic time, virtual cinema. So we're out there, and then of course we're going to be on Frontline January 8th. That's the broadcast in the US.
Well, thank you, all three of you, so much. Thank you, Maria, Ressa. You are an inspiration, and best of luck to everything coming your way, and all your various work and crusades, and just best of luck. Ramona, best of luck with the film. It's one of the best documentaries I can remember seeing in quite some time, and it's quite an achievement. So thank you both very much, and thank you, Dana, of course.
Oh my goodness. And I can't say enough. Maria continues to be an inspiration in my life, and I'll be watching very closely. And wish you the best, and hope to talk to you soon.
Hopefully there or here.
I wish I could. I miss you.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you in Santa Fe sometime really soon.
Yes, next year.
Good.
We could have been in Santa Fe, right? Oh my God, I love Santa Fe. Next year.
See?
You're invited.
When you have your next film and all this is behind us, right?
Yes. Oh my God. I can't even imagine that now. Yeah.
Well, could happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it will happen. It's gotta happen, right?
It's gotta happen.
Yeah, it's gotta happen.
All right.
Thank you so much. Have a great day and night.
Bye.